today.
This is JJ and Alex.
I made a name for myself. I told you I won't be denied.
As you wrap up your day, it's time to get your fix of the teams you live for and the sports you love. This is JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome in, everybody. Happy Thursday to you. Thanks for being with us on the program. Alex, Kirry, Jeremiah Jensen, and Stevenson Sylvester are calling some high school football games up on the hill, up at Rice Eccles. Of course, it's that time of year for them to shirk their radio responsibilities on the normal traditional airwaves and bring you some high school football action. It's the best time of the year for high school football, by the way. All these teams earning their way up to Rice Eccles Stadium. Really cool. Awesome time, but that means JJ is going to be out today. He'll be back, I think, on Monday, right? Our Football Friday tomorrow is going to be at Kenny J's Barbecue, and we're going to be jamming there, still enjoying barbecue. That's the only thing that I have to hold over his head is to be able to say, don't you wish that you could have been doing this? Instead, Mitch Harper is going to be joining me today and tomorrow for our coverage, of course, over the next couple of days. Mitch Harper, of course, our BYU insider for KSLSports.com, and he also is we co-host our First and 12 program where we talk all things Big 12. And we didn't get to do the show this week because we were preempted by some basketball over on KSL News Radio. But guess what, Mitch? We can talk all the Big 12 we want because it's not light on drama right now, brother. How are you?
Doing good, man. There's always drama in the Big 12 that prides itself on being a different league, and the drama meter, as Brett Yormark always talks about, it's off the charts in the Big 12. So say less.
I know.
Just a typical Thursday in the Big 12.
Don't you feel like, even though this is not the kind of drama that most athletic directors would love? Athletic directors, the commissioners of a conference wouldn't love their athletic directors in their conferences being removed from the college football playoff committee and stepping away from a school. I feel like Brett Yormark's the kind of guy who goes, I love it. Any press is good press. I want this. Give it to me all day. Put it in my veins. This is the kind of guy who's like, he likes the drama because guess what? They have to figure it out. And, it's not it's crazy, but yeah, we're not breaking any news with this, but it is something that's been happening all day. But Mark Harlan's officially installed as the Big 12 representative, somebody who's been on the CFP committee before. And so it's been quite a last 48 hours for the folks down at Baylor. Not a good week for them, obviously, to be going through this stuff, too, with Utah coming to town.
Well, and that's the funny thing, too, is just these two teams are playing this week in Waco, so that adds a unique storyline to this game. But, yes, it's definitely something where it's not ideal for Baylor when it just adds to the uncertainty with Dave Aranda and his coaching position, because Baylor has been so underwhelming this year. There was a lot of talk about them maybe winning the Big 12 this year, but their defense has been terrible, even though they had a great performance last week, but that was against UCF. So this just only adds to the drama, and it kind of leads you to think that Baylor's going to have some sort of big changes in the offseason after this year comes to a close here, which is going to be, I think, very uneventful, and I think it's going to look pretty bad this weekend against the Utes.
Well, we've got tons that we're going to be talking about when it comes to this, because we've got this today, we've got TCU and BYU, we've got all sorts of things to cover from that angle. Bear Tourney, the head coach of the Utah Mammoth, is going to make his weekly appearance with us at 4 o'clock today, so you don't want to miss any of that. Let's jump in officially, though, top of the program, top of the show with The Cut. Let's jump in.
It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is what made the cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Trajan Wealth brings you this portion of the program. TRAJANwealth.com for all your trusted local needs in retirement. TrajanWealth.com. Let's start off, Mitch, right off of the bat here. Let's get to BYU versus TCU. And the depth chart for the TCU game, you're obviously very much in the thick of this thing. And looking back at kind of what TCU has meant to this rivalry with BYU after Mountain West days that they've had, they don't have a ton of history, despite the fact that it feels like it's one of those teams that has just been an absolute thorn in the side for BYU fans at certain points in their history. When TCU has been really good during those Gary Patterson years, BYU found itself on the receiving end on some big losses and some big games that featured the Horned Frogs and BYU down at LaVell Edwards Stadium, at Ammon Carter Stadium down there in Fort Worth. And so this is a little bit of a renewal of a team, of a game that we've seen before. Sonny Dykes is no joke. This is a guy who could be prolific. He's got Josh Hoover, who's been really, really good as a quarterback. But like Baylor and Sawyer Robertson, speaking of, a team that we thought that was going to go a lot further this year and has been a little bit disappointing has been TCU. Notwithstanding, I think we all know that means it doesn't mean much in the Big 12 because you can, week in and week out, have teams that smell blood in the water and they just kind of they find a way. And TCU is never going to be a team that's going to lack in talent.
No question. And this is a game, too, that, BYU desperately needs, because if you lose this one, the season goes completely south. Yeah, you're going to a bowl game, but if you want to be a playoff team and you want Mark Harlan's stamp of approval on that college football playoff committee, you need to win this game. So this is an important game for BYU, and you're right that TCU has had BYU's number. BYU hasn't beat the Horned Frogs since 2007. Now, obviously, they haven't played annually since then, but not only have they been losses, but they've been beatdowns. 08, 09, even fast forward to 2023, the first time they met as Big 12 teams, TCU has just hammered BYU at every which turn that they seem to play. So I'm really curious to see, how BYU responds. I think that's kind of the big theme coming into this matchup is just the response, because last year BYU I think folded. I think they kind of reverted back to independence thinking, where lose one game, season is lost. Nothing is lost here by losing to the number 6 team in the country. Everything is still in front of this BYU squad, and that's kind of the message that Jack Kelly said to me yesterday, was that they still believe they're one of the best teams in college football, and I think they're really excited to be back at home, because when you think about it, BYU in 7 of the last 9 weeks of the season, that includes 2 byes, but they've only played twice at home in the last 9 weeks. So this has been a team that's built up an 8-1 record despite basically living on the road. So to have 2 of their final 3 at home, I think serves them well. And I think they also match up pretty well against TCU this year, considering that the Horned Frogs are going to be out or without one of their top running backs in Kadvorian Barnes. He's out on the availability. I think that was pretty significant. He's been in and out of the lineup. So this is a game where BYU should win, but I think it's just kind of, again, how do they respond from what was a performance last week against Texas Tech that could really start to raise questions internally and say, how good are we really? And the players are saying all the right things, but they got to actually go show it on Saturday night.
Mitch, one of the things that has come out of this game, and obviously listening to the coaches this week, we've got some sound from Kalani and A-Rod about this team that they're going to be facing off against. They're always going to heap praise on teams, even if they don't necessarily deserve it. I think TCU is one of those teams, though, that always deserves that extra look, because they're one of the best recruiting teams in the state of Texas, which is saying a lot. I mean, you think about teams that have been, and yesterday we had one of Baylor's beat writers on with us talking about, how much money is in that pot for them to be able to recruit with. And they have, this recruiting and they're always up against TCU. They're always up against, obviously there's the big dogs in Texas and Texas A&M. But now Texas Tech has entered the chat, and they've basically leapfrogged everybody when it comes to being able to bust the checkbook out and to make those types of differences. And so that's one of these things that I think has stood out, is that TCU, they haven't lacked for being able to lock up great talent or recruiting really, really good guys. And A-Rod talked about, obviously, this team that they're facing off against and TCU itself. He knows how good that they can be. Here's what A-Rod said about that offense.
TCU is very good in their own right. Very impressed with them, and Coach Avalos is a very good defensive coordinator. So we have our hands full. But we do have a good offense. We have a good identity, and we just want to get back to it. We just need to execute better.
It's interesting because Andy Avalos he's one of these defensive coordinators that everybody in this league knows, and they know what he's capable of. But what do they anticipate with seeing this TCU defense in front of this BYU offense, and what does Bear have to do to kind of reset to be back in that level of confidence that he was running with all the way up until the Texas Tech game last week?
I think one of the things that's going to return to kind of order for BYU and that identity that Roderick is talking about is having Bear get some success on the ground, because Texas Tech took that away completely. I think there's opportunities for that against TCU. Now, TCU's got the 35th best rush defense, which is pretty solid. They've been pretty sound of stopping the run this year, better than they've been in recent years since their national championship game appearance season 3 years ago. But I think that Bears are going to have more success in this game running up the middle, which has been kind of the calling card. And I think that's what really amplified the struggles for Bear Bachmeier last week, was that, he had moments where he escaped and tried to get creative and make plays, but Texas Tech was everywhere, and they took anything away of a broken play and a big gain for BYU from happening. And, BYU has had a lot of success when Bear Bachmeier has those moments, and I think there's more opportunity for that this week. I also think, too, that passing the football should be an area where BYU has success. And, I caught up with JoJo Phillips this week, and, he had a very subpar performance. He even acknowledged as much, dropping the football.
Yeah.
They've got to help Bear Bachmeier, and you're going up against a TCU defense that's 102nd nationally in passing yards allowed. We know that Bear can put up some big numbers through the air. He's had 2 games this season with more than 300 yards. I think that could also be an opportunity. But running the football, I think Bear's going to have more success there this week against TCU. And I think that will get kind of Bear settled in and kind of back to his comfort zone, because at no point last week was he ever comfortable against a Tech defense that I think is maybe the best in college football, maybe one of the best that I've seen since Kalani Sitake took over in 2016.
Well, and in concert with obviously one of the best offenses, also, like you just don't get a lot of moments in a program and in a program's history to have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense, and Texas Tech has got one of those. TCU's got a great quarterback. Josh Hoover's been a guy whose numbers have been phenomenal this year, Mitch. And again, like I said, Sawyer Robertson and Josh Hoover are doing their part. It's like the rest of the team seems to be lacking quite a bit. But here's what Kalani said about the TCU quarterback, Josh Hoover. This is a guy who lit him up a couple of years ago down there in Fort Worth when he was a freshman. Oh, I need some sound over here, Annapolis. Here we go. Let's get to TCU quarterback Josh Hoover, Kalani Sitake. Here we go.
Yeah, he's even more deadlier. Now he has more experience. He understands the offense. You see him making checks. He's just a veteran now. You see in the way he distributes the ball to all different receivers, the way that they run the ball, the way that he reads RPOs. And I mean, he's a really good quarterback, coached really well. This isn't going to be easy, but we're going to have to find ways to be better than we were against him the first time around. And we get to have him at home, which is going to be helpful for us.
It's been weird because these guys have put up numbers. I say these guys because it seems like every week this year, Mitch, we see these numbers. Sawyer Robertson and Josh Hoover been leading the conference in passing yards and efficiency and all that stuff. And so where's the disconnect? Is it just the defense, or how is it that teams are still able to get after, not just Josh Hoover? They've been giving up sacks. They've had issues with running the football. What is it that TCU's offense is going to be able to do, or what have they been able to do, even in weeks that they haven't been winning games?
In their 3 losses, TCU has had at least 3 turnovers or more in each of the 3 games. Outside of those, they've taken care of the football. So that's going to be an area to monitor. And I think that also, you've seen TCU's offensive line really banged up throughout the season. You get kind of deep in the weeds with some of their personnel. They've been kind of unavailable, or they've played nowhere close to 100%. And I know that's to be expected this time of the year, but that group's been pretty banged up, and that maybe creates opportunities for BYU's defensive front that's really trending up after, I thought, what was a really productive day early on against Texas Tech, and the confidence that's growing from this linebacker unit. Sialia Serra, Jack Kelly, Glasker, they all had sacks. Thought there was some good pressure from BYU's defensive line at times. They can still get better, and I think that's going to be something to monitor, especially with Anisi Purcell probable. That was a positive development this week in the availability report, as he was out last week against Texas Tech. But, TCU's capable. I think that's just the thing with them, is that they're always the possibility of doing something big. I remember being 2 years ago in the bowels of Ammon G. Carter Stadium after that Josh Hoover game where he goes off for a career-high 439 passing yards, and Kalani was just almost befuddled to the point where, did we just witness another college football playoff team? That's how good Josh Hoover was 2 years ago, and he hasn't necessarily recaptured that. I mean, he's still 10th nationally in passing yards, but I don't know if he's been as explosive as you would expect passing the football deep this season. So especially last week, too, they've had slow starts, TCU. Did score a touchdown in the first half. That's kind of an area of focus for them this week, and it's to a lesser degree a focus for BYU, even though I do think that BYU's offense has had moments this season where they've gotten off to a fast start. It's just kind of bringing all three phases off to a strong start. So TCU's capable. I mean, this is not a game where BYU just waltzes in and is going to cruise by, 2 touchdowns, kind of like the West Virginia game or the Stanford game earlier in the season. This is going to be a very tough out. And think about this, too, Alex, is that BYU has not beat a team with a winning record in the month of November since joining the Big 12. This is when championships are won, and BYU has yet to show they can take out a team that has a winning record. Their only 2 wins in this month of the calendar since joining the league was Utah and Houston last season, 2 teams with losing records. So this is a big opportunity for BYU to really show their kind of championship mettle here and see if they're built to reach Arlington this year, which last year they weren't.
As you look at this one, I mean, TCU is interesting because it's a team that basically with their last loss were eliminated from any kind of contention to be a part of the college or the Big 12 championship game, and that was disappointing. I think for not just Sonny Dykes and his program, but I think you and I both looked at TCU and Baylor, frankly, as being teams that could make that extra leap and could have gone, somewhere a lot further. And instead, we're talking about teams like, even Cincinnati and frankly, even Houston has been better on the record side of things. And so it's another just wild turn of events for the Big 12. And I think TCU's been obviously a little bit disappointing. Where does Sonny Dykes go from here? Is he a kind of guy who's looking outside to the multiple power jobs that are out there, or do you think he's committed to TCU long term?
It's a good question because you kind of wonder if he does keep a wandering eye a little bit because it could, reset the clock. I think that's kind of the cliche with coaches because since that national championship game appearance, it's been really underwhelming for TCU. I mean, last year they were a 9-win team, but they didn't beat anyone in the top 25. And this year it's been 6-3, but been kind of a light schedule again. This is their biggest test really in a couple of years, I think, for TCU. So this is a big one for them too. I would say that Dykes stays at TCU. I mean, he's a guy that once graduated from Texas Tech. He's a Texas guy. I mean, I think it's a good fit there, and TCU's well resourced. And to your point earlier about recruiting, they still recruit at a really high level. I mean, top 35 type level annually, and then on those years where they have big seasons, they can get top 25 classes, and they're very competitive in the portal. So it's just maybe some of the coordinators, like a Kendall Briles, as offensive coordinator, have they not did you retool that side of things this offseason if it goes south down the stretch run for TCU? I think that would be maybe the course of action that I would think if this thing turns further south for TCU this stretch. But this BYU game is a big one for them. And because last week against Iowa State, that was a disappointing performance because had they won that game, you'd be talking about 2 teams that have Big 12 championship game aspirations in this one, and that went out the door when TCU lost a week ago.
Finally, on the I wanted to bring up something that A-Rod said, too. He was talking about coming back home like you had talked about, and he talked about how much the offense needs to kind of get its groove back and being at home and how that could settle this team. Here's what A-Rod said about his team being back at home and his offense specifically.
Being at home, I think, will help because crowd noise was a big factor Saturday. We did not handle it very well. We used a silent cadence Saturday that we had never used before, did not do very well with that. And at home, we can get back to just playing our style of football. But we are playing against a very good team. I'm very impressed with these guys.
You see that, I mean, obviously you hear that type of stuff and you go, hey, you had a bye week to get ready for those things. What was the biggest kind of failure from BYU's perspective? Because it sounds like there were a handful of things that they just, weren't ready for. And that could be from the mental aspect. That could also be from the execution part of it.
Yeah, I thought that was a just complete disappointing performance in all areas last week. I know that the defense showed well and held strong in the red zone, but that was disappointing. And, BYU's offense, for them to not be competitive, and I thought they were kind of timid and hesitant because going in, Aaron Roderick acknowledged that he thought Texas Tech was the best defense that they were going up against in 2 years since Texas in 2023.
Right.
Did that kind of play with his psyche as to how he approached the play calling? I thought it was a little bit conservative. BYU still got to stick true to its identity, and it cost you dearly. You dropped 5 spots in the playoff, and now you're on the outside looking in. And, yes, it still feels like if you win out and you get to the Big 12 championship game, you should be in the bracket. But I don't think any Cougar fan listening to this ever trusts that playoff committee when it comes to BYU. And it was weird this week when it comes to, like, loud sounds, and they were bumping up the music this week. They had some G Herbo and Southside who run it playing, blasting in the speakers. They had the music going as loud as I've ever heard it. Honestly, at practice, I'm rolling up to that thing. I'm going, do they realize it's a home game? But sometimes I guess for the defense, they get that playing so they can communicate defensively. But they got to bounce back. And I think Aaron Roderick has done an excellent job this year. I think that performance last week, he even acknowledged that was, disappointing by him and this team. I do think they bounce back, though. Can you get all 3 phases to show up? Because against Iowa State, the offense was operating at a high level, but the defense was a no-show early on until they got that pick 6 from Falatau Satuala to really open it up. So they need all 3 phases to start strong out of the gates in this one, because you let TCU hang around and settle in, especially on their offensive side. This could be a full 60 minutes game, and it's a type of game where BYU should, if they're as good of a team as we think they are, they should be able to take care of business and pull away from the Horned Frogs. But I think getting off to a strong start will be key in this one.
Let's take our first break here. Mitch Harper, of course, hanging out with me today. Sly and JJ have the call on some high school games. We're going to take a break real quick here. We'll get right into some more on the way back here. Speaking of drama in the Big 12, it's official. Mack Rhoades is on leave for personal reasons, according to Baylor, and he's also walking away from that College Football Playoff Committee chair role. And right here in the state of Utah, Mark Harlan is being asked to fill in those shoes for him, a guy who's been on that committee before. And we'll talk about that and the drama that surrounds that. And plus, just the implications of the College Football Playoff and having a representative from a league and how important that is on top of all this and where it kind of makes everything else sit. And then who replaces Mack Rhoades as well. We'll come back. More to go. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
It's another battle for the Aggies, and the KSL Sports Zone has it covered. The Aggies head south to Las Vegas for a Saturday afternoon showdown against UNLV. Your home for all the play-by-play coverage of Aggie football is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. You're locked on to JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back, JJ and Alex, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. Bell, Biv, and DeVoe making an appearance on the program today. There you go. Mitch Harper also making an appearance on the program, filling in for JJ, who's calling the games up there at Rice Eccles Stadium. What was the final of that West Orem game, by the way, Annapolis? Did it end up being 27-0 or 34-0 or something like that?
It was 34-7. West did get a touchdown.
West did get a touchdown. Well below the 68.5 points they were averaging per game or what. I mean, we say that as a little bit of a hyperbolic deal, but they honestly scored over 60 points 7 times this year. And they get to Rice Eccles Stadium and then they fall short. Orem moves on to the finals, so there you go.
BYU commit Lopeti Mawala was everywhere for Orem High. He's underrated D lineman to watch going forward.
That's the same person as Junie Mawala, right? Isn't that
Yes.
Okay.
He's Junie Mawala. Yeah, I should have clarified that.
Well, no, I'm just saying because he
was
was up at Davis sacking quarterbacks in 6A, and I'm going to be honest, they could have used him in this last game against Lone Peak. Missed you, Junie. But, yeah, I think in the first half he had 2.5 sacks in this game. He was a monster. That was the thing is I wasn't super impressed. I called the game, I think, when Orem played Timpview. You remember that game, Annapolis? And it was just kind of sloppy. It was like a 22-9 game. And, they got this Alabama committed quarterback. And, I mean, even today, I think he was 3 for 12 in the first half. It wasn't – but they were crushing them on the defensive side of the ball. West couldn't run the football, which is their superpower, obviously. And so they couldn't move the ball at all. But, JJ's got the call up there. But, yeah, I will say, having seen Junie Mawala in person a handful of times, he's pretty freaking good. And he's big too, and he's faster than everybody else out there in front of him. So that's good news for BYU fans, I guess, going forward there to see him doing as well as he is. Speaking of doing well, yesterday, Mitch, he was not doing very well as Mack Rhoades. Yesterday, we had one of the writers from the Waco Tribune Herald on with us, and Zach Smith, is that his name? So Zach Smith comes on with us yesterday, and he goes, yeah, we got this stuff unfolding here at Baylor right now that is not good. And in the game that they had against Arizona State when they lost late, and it was a blackout game, it was an evening game, and Michael Trigg, who was their superstar tight end, Mackey Award finalist, all that stuff. He's definitely one of the best tight ends in the country. He's one of the best players and one of the bright spots for that Baylor team. He's wearing some yellow undershirt, and apparently that really was irking the athletic director. Now, this is apparently what everything kind of started from. Now, this was a while ago that this happened, but it apparently led to a verbal and physical altercation between Mack Rhoades, the athletic director, and Michael Trigg, which is, Mitch, unfreaking heard of. To have an athletic director involved at that level. Now, these are all allegations. There must be film somewhere of this, but I don't know. I mean, it was somebody said it was on the sideline. But what was brought up yesterday by this beat writer was, you have to look at what this timing is. People wanted this story to come out when this is coming out right now. And a lot of that has to do with the person that they don't want at the athletic director position. This is a guy who has created some enemies after, I guess, not having a great relationship with Kim Mulkey, the Hall of Fame women's hoops coach, who ended up going over to LSU after being historic down there. That didn't sit well with the folks in Waco. And then you have this, and this is a guy who is bringing a lot of attention to Baylor because he's the College Football Playoff Committee chair. He's the one answering the questions, albeit poorly, on a weekly basis on how they're making these decisions on from the College Football Playoff perspective. Everything has gotten to be a mess. He's having to step down there. He's stepping away, taking a leave of absence per his own personal reasons, according to that, and then also walking away from the College Football Playoff Committee chair position. And so now Mark Harlan has been installed as the Big 12 representative there. It's just all a mess right now, on top of the fact that this is bad timing for the College Football Playoff Committee. It's bad timing for the athletic director there. It's awful timing for Dave Aranda, who is buddies with Mack Rhoades and is already not getting a lot of great looks. There's no way that this isn't a distraction for this team this week.
Yeah, this is going to be a huge distraction, I would think, because it impacts the team with the player being at the center of it, these allegations. So it's a mess down in Waco. And, you look at this going forward and think, Mack Rhoades was kind of one of the prominent ADs in the Big 12. It's hard to imagine he's making his way back to Baylor, he's kind of led Baylor with a lot of huge renovations. A lot of money's been pumped into there. I don't know where they go next if there's a continued fallout from this, because it's hard to imagine a path back. But it feels like there's going to be a huge shakeup with Baylor football, because it's not too long ago that Baylor football was really rolling, and I know that came under a cloud of scrutiny too. With Baylor, but just 4 years ago, even with Aranda, they were winning the Big 12. They were one of the best teams in college football, and it's been a massive fall from grace for Baylor football. They don't even look, half the time competitive outside of, some occasional offensive performance. Defensively, they've been a mess this year. So this is tough times for Baylor, and it's kind of crazy how it all ties into Utah, flying into Waco tomorrow and getting ready for this game as they kind of keep their playoff hopes, which Rhoades was part of at one point. Now it's Mark Harlan setting into the college football playoff.
And it's weird because now, and I don't know how it works with the College Football Playoff Committee. Does every conference get one representative? Do they have, because they make the whole committee up of representative from conferences. Then they have just kind of some randos. I say random people in there, but we've seen Condoleezza Rice on this committee before. We've seen people that they put on this thing to just be like, hey, let's have some smart people who like to watch football come in and make these arguments with one another. And so, what does that do with the Big 12 walking Mack Rhoades away, and then you've got Mark Harlan coming in, and I know everybody's supposed to check their hat at the door, but that's a hard thing to do and a hard thing to ask for. But this is also, Mark Harlan, I would assume, is the pick because he had already done this previously between 19 and 23 in the Pac-12 for Utah.
I remember talking to Mark Harlan a couple of years ago, or it was last year before Utah joined the Big 12. It was at one of the Big 12 spring meetings about the future of the playoff and that experience in the room. And, he acknowledged it was really enlightening, to see how the playoff is put together. And I think just having that knowledge when you're adding new, committee members on the fly, you probably go to people that have that previous experience. But what's funny with the playoff is why can't 11 people put together a 12-team field? Why do you need 13 people to put together this bracket? I don't know. It seems kind of strange. Like, oh no, how can the college football playoff function with 11 people if they're all truly of integrity? Why do you need someone for each individual conference represented? Help it make sense. I'll never understand how this thing works with the college football playoff, but I think, with Harlan's previous experience, he can step in and kind of hit the ground running of how they actually go about, voting. Because when they rank these teams, it's basically a head-to-head, sizing them up. Okay, 1, slot them all in, and then go all the way down to 25. It's a long process, and it's one that's always going to have scrutiny attached to it. So having that prior experience has got to help.
With all of this and the distractions that go on with it, and next hour, we'll listen to some of the comments that Dave Aranda, who's not the most electric guy at the podium, he gets up and he kind of made some explanations this week, and so we'll listen to that next hour, kind of in more length though. But for this game, there's no way that it's not a distraction. Your biggest fan is in the athletic department is the athletic director. He's buddy with Dave Aranda, and he might have been the last man standing to be able to save that guy's job. But it feels like there are people in Baylor and in Waco that do not want Dave Aranda to come back next year.
No question, because and honestly, I think it's time. I mean, I thought it was time, honestly, last year when I remember going to that game BYU and Baylor in September when Baylor was 2-4 or 2-3, and I thought it's over. Baylor is down and out. The stadium's 3/4 empty. Everyone's checked out. And to their credit, they turned it around last year. But this season's been an underperforming, stretch. And Aranda, it's not like he hasn't had time. I mean, the guy's been firing coordinators left and right. He's fired assistant coaches. At some point, you say maybe Aranda's just not the guy, and this could be the opportunity for Baylor to just have kind of a clean break, because that's a program that you could win. And with their private, dollars that they probably have, I'm sure they got a lot more than people probably realize than maybe some state institutions like an Iowa State. So I think Baylor could be a job that could be, pretty attractive if they get the right hire, assuming they do move on from Aranda. But it makes too much sense. And I think this is a spot, too, where Utah comes in, and I think they put the hammer down, and it might even magnify the need to make a change at head coach. But then you go, who makes that call when the AD is not in the building anymore? It becomes a whole, power structure to those board of trustees. Then just say, you know what, we're pulling the plug. We're getting this over with on Sunday if Utah does, in fact, just blow out the Bears, which I think they honestly will. And this could get real ugly for Baylor even more this weekend.
With this whole drama that goes on with Dave Aranda and this is not a great time for schools to have to be battling for top names to come in to get jobs at the P4 level, because so many big time jobs are going to be up in the offseason.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, sorry. But this is an awful time for Baylor to have to start looking for coaches, because some of the biggest names are going to be taken up by bigger programs that are looking for jobs right now.
Yeah, it's a tough time. I mean, I think it was Steve Sarkisian who said, you can fire all these coaches, but who are you going to hire, too?
I know. Yeah.
I think that, the thing is with a place like Baylor is that, Dave Aranda was kind of an outside-the-box hire. He was a coordinator at LSU and led their great defense, and they got a national championship. You're not going to look at a place like Baylor and say they're going to pluck a SEC head coach and go that route. But I think that you can get an up-and-comer and someone who's climbing the ladder that could really inject some life, because sometimes these coaches, their voice just kind of gets stale. It just feels like Baylor is a bit stale, and then everything gets amplified when you see stories like this, because then everyone's kind of, looking into everything, texting people, asking around and going, what's the issues in that athletic department? And, Baylor, over the course of its history, I mean, in recent years, last decade or so, they have not been immune to controversies and issues like that. So I got to imagine that sort of thing makes them very uneasy, too, that when you bring something that's bad light to the program, you got to act and you got to move forward. And then you pair it up with bad football on the field. Maybe a fresh break and just making a change would be best for Baylor going forward, because they could get a good head coach. And I think they could honestly be a program that's one of the better ones in the Big 12 on a consistent basis. I feel like I say that with a lot of these programs in the league. I think that's what makes this conference so much fun. But, I think that, Baylor is underachieving significantly right now in football and in basketball too. I think that's something that gets forgotten as well, is that they were once a national title team, and they haven't been to the round of 32 since, or gotten to a Sweet 16. So they are an athletic department, I think, from their major revenue generators, are underachieving. So it makes sense to have a complete change going forward.
We'll take a break here. When we come back, we've got more to chat about. We've got our Would You Rather around the corner. Top of the hour, coming up in just about 15 minutes. We're going to be chatting with Bear Tourney, head coach of the Utah Mammoth. We're going to talk about this team and getting out of a slump last night. They needed it, and that third period was a flurry of goals. And we'll talk to Bear about how his team has recovered from coming off of that road trip and how big of a deal it was to get that big win against Buffalo last night at Delta Center. Stay with us. More to go. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
Listen, everybody. Real-life hypotheticals to get your brain churning. As JJ and Alex ask, would you rather?
All right, welcome back, everybody. JJ and Alex, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. JJ up calling some high school games here. I think Brighton and Springville have just hit the half, and I think Springville, unless you've got it set on your TiVo, I don't want to ruin anything for you, but they're up 17-14 at the half. Close one there up at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Love the high school football playoffs, and love that those kids get to play up at Rice-Eccles Stadium. It's a really cool moment for them. Let me ask you this. Your kid playing in a state championship high school game, Mitch Harper, or your kid getting a Division III offer that you're going to have to actually end up paying for them to go to school and play at some small D3 school?
I would say the D3 offer.
Come on, college football player.
Yeah, college football player, and knowing that, hey, you just got to get an opportunity. You kill it at D3,
I could
go
be a
portaling.
D2 guy. Yeah, man.
You can go portaling and level up to D2, maybe go FCS. So, yeah, take that D3 offer and just go portaling for 4 years and 4. I'm not advocating for that, but hey, you wanted to.
But that's the world that we live in now.
Yes.
It's like, get me to Incarnate Word at 0 stars, and then I'll be in the NFL draft going #1 overall.
Get me to College of Eastern Utah State, and then I'm getting to BYU.
Oh, College of Eastern Utah State. See, you had me until College of Eastern, because I'm pretty sure that's a real place. I don't know if I don't know if they have a poppin' football program. I don't know. I did see that Snow put up 100 this year against somebody. Did you see that?
I did. Yes,
when they score 101
that was crazy.
Points. Boy, that's I'm coming after you if you're going to score 100 points on us. I mean, I guess you could always go, well, we're just running the football. That's all we were doing. But you score 100 points these days, you're going to get you're going to get a lot of hate mail from those guys out there. All right, we're going to try to get this thing wrapped up here early this hour just so we can get to the top, because we typically take Bear Tourney's phone call at the top of the 4 o'clock hour, and we're going to honor his schedule, and we'll get to you what Coach Bear has to say this week on his weekly appearance with us. They got the big win last night. Man, they needed that third period to do it too. A flurry of 4 goals to give the guys on the ice over here at Delta Center a 5-2 win over Buffalo. We'll take a break. We got more to go. Bear Tourney joins us next right here, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.